The Second Blackfyre Rebellion took place in the year 212 AC. Daemon the Second Blackfyre had finally been convinced by Lord Gormon Peake, among other conspirators, to launch a second attempt to take the Iron Throne. While not an all-out bloody war on the scale of the first Blackfyre Rebellion, the second is much more interesting from a political point of view, with much being behind closed doors, with scheming and planning that would all come to a head at the Whitewalls Tourney. If events at the Tourney had occurred differently, as they very well easily could have, then there is a possibility that Daemon the Second Blackfyre could have rallied enough support to take the Iron Throne for House Blackfyre. Across the narrow sea in Tyrosh, Daemon the Second Blackfyre, the eldest living son of Daemon the First Blackfyre, is said to have dreamed that a dragon would be born at Whitewalls. Lord Gormon Peake, a Blackfyre supporter, somehow heard of Daemon's dream and convinced him to cross the narrow sea and make a play for the Iron Throne. The famous Whitewalls Tourney was to celebrate the marriage of Lord Ambrose Butterwell to a daughter of Lord Frey. The tourney was used by some of those who had sided with House Blackfyre during the first Blackfyre Rebellion, and those who felt resentment towards the rule of King Aerys I and his hand, Brynden Rivers, as a way to join their forces and plan in secret without suspicion. Most of the houses and lords who had fought for the Black Dragon in the original rebellion had their children taken as hostages. In many of these cases, those hostages had died during the Great Spring Sickness, which allowed for their families to plot once again. There were even some cases where the lord who had fought in the first rebellion had died in the years since, and the titles and lands had passed to a son, who perhaps did not value the lives of their kin taken as hostages, or maybe saw this as the only way to gain their freedom. However, one important aspect to consider when talking about the Second Blackfyre Rebellion is that Aegor Rivers, the half-brother of Daemon the First Blackfyre, and one of the great bastards, who played such an important role in the first Blackfyre Rebellion, did not think much of Lord Peake's plan, and mistrusted Daemon's supposed dreams, thus did not give him his support, nor the sword Blackfyre, the sword of kings. The key organisers of the tourney, namely Sir Tormund Heddle and Lord Gormon Peake, convinced Lord Butterwell to name his prized possession, a dragon egg, given by King Aegon IV as a prize for the winner of the tourney. During the wedding tourney, Daemon was under the guise of a hedge knight, going by the name of Sir Jon The Fiddler. He was given a place of honour on the dais, uncommon for someone of his supposed position of hedge knight, which may have risen some suspicions. After the bedding had taken place, the history books tell us that Daemon, still under the guise of Jon, approached a fellow hedge knight, Sir Duncan The Tall, and told him about dreams he was having, involving Duncan wearing a white cloak in the future. In retrospect, yet another dream of Daemon's that would in time prove to be true, as Sir Duncan would later join the Kingsguard. It is also believed that Daemon tried to win Duncan over to his cause, but Duncan remained unsure. They were then interrupted by Lord Gormon Peake. Alan Cockshaw, a close friend of Daemon and speculated lover who had been ecstatic up until this point of Daemon's return to Westeros, deeply resented Duncan for the loss of Daemon's attention and became his secret enemy. Peake and Heddle attempted to rig the tourney so Daemon would win by bribing his opponents, who would be competing in his disguise as Jon the Fiddler. However, the plot was foiled by the intervention of Sir Duncan the Tall and the prowess of Sir Gledon Flowers, who had refused the bribe of Lord Peake. The dragon egg prize for the winner of the tourney had been stolen, and Sir Gledon was framed for the deed, due to his refusal to lose to Daemon in the lists. The missing egg was found to be in his possession, and he was arrested and thrown into a cell. However, Duncan slew Tormund in single combat, and revealed the egg had been found in Glendon's saddlebags, was in fact just painted stone. The real dragon egg was still missing. In truth, it is believed that Daemon himself had been unaware of the plot and the wider plan of Lord Peake and what it entailed, which left him unsure who to believe or trust. He opted for a different course altogether, and revealed his true identity as Daemon the Second Blackfyre, and ordered a trial by battle be given to Gledon, giving him a chance to defend himself, during which Gledon unhorsed Daemon on the first pass. However, by this time, news quickly spread throughout the castle and Tourney that Lord Brynden Rivers, known as Bloodraven, the feared Hand of the King was marching on the castle with 3 members of the King's Guard of Aerys I, his own personal guard of 300 Raven's Teeth and 500 knights, and 5,000 infantrymen from the Crownlands and Riverlands, with more likely to follow. These men were drawn from House Targaryen, Hayford, Massey, Rosby, Stokeworth, Moudon, and House Blackwood, the house of Brendan's mother, Melissa. Daemon called for those within the castle to fight to the death, but was laughed off by most of the fighting men. Seeing the gravity of the situation and the size of his uncle's host, Daemon then marched out of the castle and offered single combat. Daemon the Blackfyre promptly taken prisoner by Bloodraven, thus ending the Second Blackfyre rebellion before it truly even began, preventing bloodshed at Whitewalls, in which many would have died, and stopping the risk of a second Blackfyre rebellion from turning into a long and drawn-out war that would engulf the whole of Westeros from the Wall to the Sands of Dawn. In the aftermath, Lord Ambrose Butterwell kept only 1/10 of his vast fortune, and the castle of Whitewalls was forfeit to the Iron Throne for his role in the conspiracy, with it later being razed to the ground as punishment. Sir Tormund Hedel had died at the hands of Sir Duncan The Tall, and Lord Gormon Peake was executed for his part in the rebellion, alongside many others who were too executed for their parts as well. Oddly, Aegor Rivers not being part of this second Blackfyre rebellion stands out as a key part of the history. Aegor, known as Bitterstill, did not take part in the rebellion, and as we know, refused to give Daemon Blackfyre, the Sword of Kings, something that many historians speculated did damage Daemon's attempt to take the crown. Daemon the Blackfyre was taken prisoner by Bloodraven and taken to King's Landing, where he would be held prisoner and hostage, to prevent any attempt by Aegor Rivers to crown Daemon's younger brother Aegon, as by the Blackfyre's own logic, Aegon could not be considered the rightful claimant to the throne while Daemon still lived, albeit a prisoner. But Daemon the Blackfyre died a few years later, between the years 212 and 219 AC, while a hostage in the Red Keep. Thus Aegon and Bitterstill were free to launch the Third Blackfyre Rebellion.